In today's lesson, we'll talk about congruence or congruency. We already know what congruent means. We've talked about it in our other classes. Some of you just refer to it as being equal, but it actually, particularly with geometry, it means more than that. So I want to make sure that we have a clear definition of it. So it means same size and same shape. So basically, if we're looking at a shape and another shape is congruent to it, it's an identical twin, okay? So the symbol that we use for that, looks like an equal sign with a little squiggly over it like so, okay? So that is the symbol that we will use to mean congruent. So when we see that in a mathematical statement, it means is congruent to. Okay, so it's really important to get beyond just thinking of congruent as meaning equal. It really means the identical twin of something. So the same exact size, the same exact shape. So if we look down here, these triangles represent congruent shapes. And the way that we know that is because for each side on triangle ABC, there is a congruent side on triangle, we're going to call it EDF. Actually, let's back that up. On each side of triangle BAC, there is a congruent side on triangle EDF. Now, I corrected myself for a good reason, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. Likewise, for each angle that exists in triangle BAC, there is a congruent angle in triangle EDF. Okay, so what I want to do is to start by making a congruence statement for this to show that this triangle is congruent to the other. So we're going to start by using the triangle symbol, which is just simply a triangle. And I'm going to very specifically name this triangle BAC. So I started at B, I went to A, and I went to C. Now I want you to understand something, that I chose, or I already set the order on this first triangle. I started at the angle that has the single arc label. I chose to move to the angle that has the double arcs marked, and then I moved to the angle that has triple marks. And as a result, that's going to establish the way in which I'm going to move around the other triangle so that I can match up the corresponding. What corresponding means kind of the partner or the matching angles on the other triangle. So we're going to say angle BAC is congruent to triangle. We're going to start at the single arc angle, since that's where we started on the first. Angle E. We're going to move on to the double arc angle, D, and then we're going to move on to F. So we're moving in a very specific order so that I know that if I'm looking at angle B in the first triangle, it's congruent to angle E in the second triangle because they both have single marks. If I am looking to compare which angles are congruent with the triple marks, well, angle C is triple marked, which means it's congruent with angle F, which is triple marked. So those are the third letters we see when we label. So this is what we call a congruence statement. It tells us that one triangle is congruent, there's that symbol, to the other. Okay, so what I'd like to do from here, I'm actually going to copy down my congruence statements. I'm going to once again say angle BAC is congruent to. I did a little bit better in drawing it this time. I'm sorry, I keep saying angle. Triangle BAC is congruent to triangle EDF. So what we can begin to do is to start to pair up in individual congruent statements congruent sides. So let's go back up to our triangle. If I start with this side here, I started at the angle with the single mark and I moved to the angle with the double mark. So I created, so I'm looking at that side. That side I could call BA since that's the direction I moved. And don't forget, it's a line segment. So side BA. If I want to move over to the other triangle to match the side that is congruent to its corresponding side, I'll start again, since I started at the single angle here, the single marked angle on the first triangle, I'll go back to the single marked angle on the second triangle and move to the double marked. Okay, so that we moved from E to D. So we call that side ED. Okay, now we can confirm those are congruent because they both have the single tick marks. And the only thing that's left to do is to show that they're congruent to each other. So we can do that. We can keep going with marking. So let's continue and we'll go on to side AB. That's one of my double marked triangle, one of my double marked sides. So side AB is congruent to. What is it congruent to? Well, let's see. I went from the double to the triple. So here's my other double tick marked side on the other triangle. I went from the double arced angle to the triple arced angle. So that's DF. So we're going to say that we're congruent to side DF. And then we only have one more to do because this being a triangle, there are three sides. So we can go one more time. And I'll go from the triple to the single. So I'm going to go CB, side CB. And I'm going to go from the triple to the single is congruent to side FE. So side CB, side CB is congruent to side FE. And don't forget to put your congruency symbol in. Okay, so what you'll notice here is I don't even need to look at the figure. When I matched up side BA, I put these two letters together. The first letter and the second letter based on the name of my triangle, which means that they match up in that same order with side ED in the other triangle. Likewise, when I named, oops, I think I made a mistake. I said DF, I need to go back and call this side AC, side AC. Let's go back and double check it. Yep, okay. When I did side AC in that order, I matched it up to side DF in the other triangle. And then when I did side CB, notice I worked backwards, CB, I did in the same order side FE. So any two of these three vertices that you match up together, you can go to the other triangle in the name and do the same thing, okay? So we're going to do the same thing with angles. And actually with angles for now, we're just going to name angles by their vertex instead of the 3 points that make it up. So we can use the same strategy. So if I'm going to start with angle B in the first triangle, then I can match it up to angle E in the second triangle. And if we go back up to the figure, angle B and angle E are congruent because they have the same single marking, the single arc marking. And then if I move on to angle A in my first triangle, since that's the middle letter of my named triangle, then it should be congruent with angle D in my second triangle. And again, we want to use the congruent symbol. So let's go back up to our figure. Angle A double marked, is congruent with angle D, double marked. And the last angles we should be able to match up are angle C, because of the triple marks, along with angle F, triple marks. And that makes sense because angle C is the third vertex named in our triangle. And it matches, angle C is the third angle matched up in our triangle with angle F. So those are congruent as well. So there's two ways that we can go about recognizing congruent parts, or what we sometimes call corresponding parts of congruent shapes. We can base it on the ticks or the arcings of the sides or the angles, but moving in the correct order. Or once we establish the names of our congruent shapes, we can just pair up or match the corresponding pieces based on their vertices that make up either the angles or the segments. So we'll talk more about this in class. In the meantime, there's a short Google form for you to finish, and we'll get more practice getting familiar with congruent shapes tomorrow.